Hey friends, welcome back to Thrive in Aligned Healing Podcast. This is episode 62. This is a two-part series that we're super excited to do. You guys can totally listen to it on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you guys are listening to us. But there's going to be a lot of visual graphics in this episode. It's going to be, all of our podcast episodes are on YouTube. So if you want to jump over to see all of the slides and stuff that Carmen's presenting in this episode, that's where it's going to be at Thrive in Aligned Healing. So what we're talking about in these next two episodes is energy, frequency, and then energetic medicine. And episode 2 is going to start pulling in manifestation and the quantum field. They're all kind of intertwined in terms of like energy and frequency and the universe and humans. It's just, we had to get some kind of a little bit more concrete examples. So energetic medicine was a little bit easier to take this abstract thing and kind of make it understandable for our physical world.
Yes, hopefully that's the goal. So when we're talking about, so in my world, I call it energetic medicine, right? So energetic medicine uses this quantum physics to influence our health, right? Within that energetic medicine umbrella can fall things like homeopathy, flower essences, traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, would fall within that umbrella of energetic medicine, right? If you guys are familiar with cell salts or undas, all of those are very similar. So to understand a little bit, at least get like a glimpse in the window of quantum mechanics or quantum physics, it's a little bit different, okay? And I'm going to make it really simple because that's how I understand it, is simply. So what we're used to when we think about physics, there's different worlds of physics, right? What we're used to is like the Newtonian physics. That's what we've been taught. Gravity, right? The apple's falling out of the tree, hits Newton in the head. Inertia, right? Like when things are in motion, they stay in motion, right? Those things that we've learned in school in physics, that's Newtonian physics.
Okay.
So quantum physics is a little bit different in that we are looking at particles that we can't see, right? So we know that molecules are made up of electrons and protons and those atoms. And maybe you guys have heard of like the atom smashers, right? There's these colliders around the world. The biggest one is in Switzerland, which kind of Big Bang Theory made popular. We had an atom collider underground at Cornell. And so what they do is they take these particles that we can't see, these atoms, and they collide them together so that they will kind of break apart, and then they try to measure the components within that atom. Okay. So by doing that, we can see those individual components, those electrons and protons, and how, and there's something that's called quarks, how they influence the world around them. Okay. So when we look at these particles, technically they're particles and they're waves at the same time. Okay. This is where it gets a little bit different, because we think of, okay, if it's a particle, it's like a spot, right? Like I can see a spot. Mm-hmm. Well, when you look at that spot and you look at it a little bit closer, it's actually not a spot, it's a wave.
Okay, the spot is kind of like an illusion.
Kind of. So in this world of physics, it can be a particle and a wave at the same time, right?
Okay, so I mean, I always have to make it simple, right? It's as if I'm up in an, let's just say an airplane, and I look down and I see this spot.
Yes.
It's a spot. It looks like a spot. But then we land and I'm closer and it's a cow.
Yes. Similarly, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Where it becomes about that perception, yeah,
Okay.
where you are.
Okay.
But in so when we're thinking about these particles or these energetics, they also are not just a wave, they also emit waves, right?
Okay.
So much like, oh, I have to be a host to share my screen.
Hold on a second.
So much like if you were to take a pebble and throw it into a puddle or a pond, that you can watch those ripples, right? You can watch it make waves. So those waves are dependent on how big the pebble is, right? How big the pebble is and how much mass you move, if you will. Okay. So I want to share my screen. So my first picture is, you see this particle, right? So that particle, the reason why they call it a particle and a wave, because that particle influences the world around it, right? So even though we can't see those protons, those neutrons and electrons, they are always influencing the world around them, right? The space around them. When I say world, the space around them. So whether that particle is within our body, whether it's out in the environment, whether it's within a mass, it's all creating this wave like field, which always has potential energy.
Okay.
Okay. So another way to look at it, if you guys are familiar with sine waves, this is another way that they can depict it, is that, okay, so that wave is constantly being emitted from different particles around us. Now we can actually measure these waves, and this is what we do in certain aspects of energetic medicine. So it's usually not as technical as measuring the waves, but a lot of German scientists in the 80s took a whole field of bioenergetics and started actually measuring these things because I wanted to be able to use it for medicine. And so out of that, or they wanted to understand, homeopathic medicine a little bit better. Okay. Homeopathic medicine has been around since the 1700s, and it was started in Germany, and we still use it today in the US in the early 1800s to the early 1900s. A lot of the med schools in the US were homeopathic med schools. And then that kind of changed after 1910 with the introduction of the American Medical Association. But so these ideas of the sine, that all these particles are creating a sine wave. Okay. Now, what is tricky about understanding energetic medicine, and we're going to talk more about this in the next episode, especially when it comes to manifestation and a little bit more about quantum mechanics, is that every time they've studied, and this is what makes the field of quantum mechanics a little bit more, it's not, people consider it theoretical because of this, okay, is because these waves are always changing, right? So what they found, even in working with those atom smashers, those colliders, is that the scientists can influence the results of that, those experiments or that energetic field, okay?
And is that by observation? That's Dispenza talks about that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so part of that is because we can't, so this is obviously not my picture, I borrowed it from the internet. But the reason why is because we can not easily single out one particle, right? And measure that wave. We can theoretically, but in reality, this picture shows a little bit more about what's going on, right? We always have these different waves, and these different waves are associated with different frequencies. Okay. And so within an individual, within a human being, within a certain medicine, within, things around us, there's always going to be a certain level of energy in those things. Okay. If we take it back to like Einstein, you know, that equation E equals mc squared, it
Yes.
essentially says that energy creates mass and mass creates energy.
Energy creates mass. Mass creates energy. Okay.
So if we think of things with mass, right, which is pretty much the solid objects, things that we can see that are tangible around us, have energy.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, are you following me?
Yeah, I'm just like I'm putting it into the quantum field. Like it's energy. That quantum field created mass, Earth,
Yes.
and then in humans, and the humans, which are uh, mass, can
Yep, we're
create
tangible.
energy.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. It's making sense.
So we're totally simplifying this, okay?
We have to.
But we have to, but I wanted to show this picture because this shows us a diagram of all the different waves happening at the same time, right? And each wave, they depict these by different colors, but each wave is a different frequency.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So, as far as homeopathic medicine goes, is that we are influencing our particular frequency at a certain time.
Okay.
Right. So, if our frequency is we usually use homeopathy in relation to a symptom, an illness, even a diagnosis for some, or sometimes we can do a constitutional remedy to help overall balance things. And I tell folks, they describe homeopathy as like a cellular, stimulates the cellular repair. Okay. And the reason why they say that is because it's not affecting necessarily the biochemistry or the biology. It's actually changing the frequency of the cells. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you remember our original sine wave, right, you have a single wave. And again, we're simplifying this. If I introduce another, either an opposing or just a different wave, it will influence that original sine wave, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can kind of see that here. You can see so if you're taking a homeopathic remedy, say I'm taking a homeopathic remedy for a headache, right? Say it's like Napmer, and I'm taking homeopathic medicine for a homeopathic remedy for a headache. That homeopathic remedy, whether it's in tincture form or in a pellet form, has an imprinted energetic wave, if you will, associated with that. Okay. So if I influence that frequency into my body, then it's influencing where my frequency was to promote a new frequency. We're working towards a healing frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
I know. Okay. So, let's see. Okay. So much like, and you guys have probably seen these. Do you remember these pendulum things that we put on our desk, right? It's the same idea. It's just in the waveform, it's just drawn out, right? So we can see this, in the world around us. Say if you've got the pendulum, you start one end way out here and it'll start clicking back and forth, and then the whole set of balls will all rhythmically move in the same direction, right? You're changing the frequencies of this pendulum based on the original influence of that one ball that you pulled out further to start the movement.
Okay.
So when you graph that looks like those waves are changing because you're influencing that frequency by adding an energetic medicine.
Okay.
All right. Does that make sense?
Yes. I
Okay.
think of it this way, like if we have a cell that's not healthy and it like, I'm not the doctor, so if I don't get this analogy right, you're gonna have to correct me. But it's not very healthy and it has a very low frequency,
Yes.
right? It's very slow and drawn out, so it's not able to regenerate to create a healthier cell, right?
Yes.
So then we introduce homeopathy that has a faster wave,
Yes.
then that cell that's not that slow will like it'll help it to increase its wave to be faster to become a healthier cell.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So yes, so that's it in a nutshell. Let's see. Let me go back. Here we go to stop sharing my screen. So that is the simple the simple form to be able to introduce that, to kind of explain what's changing when we add something to the system like an energetic medicine, right? Because we're trying to influence that change.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So now take that and I'm going to add a little bit more to it. Okay.
Okay.
So along the same lines, right? We are created from energy, right? We're created from energy. We've got mass. We're created from mass and energy. That E equals MC squared.
Yeah.
So we take that and we look at it a little bit deeper. Okay. So each one of our organ systems, right? We see this in Chinese medicine. Each one of our organ systems is associated with a muscle body. Okay.
Can you give me an example?
Sorry.
Can you give me an example? Like the liver is associated with this muscle body or
All right, so I'm not great at this part because that's associated with applied kinesiology and like muscle testing. So I am used to testing the muscles, but not always knowing the muscle bodies. But so let me give you an example. Say our stomach is associated with the serratus anterior. Okay. So when we're doing muscle testing, we can test the serratus anterior and get an idea of whether our stomach meridian or our stomach organ system is strong or weak, or if it needs some attention. Okay. So because of that relationship, right? Just like we saw those particles, right? Everything is influencing everything else. But because those relationships and because we can actually test those muscles, we can get an idea as to what organ systems might be dysfunctional in some form or fashion. Okay. Now, if we think of those muscle bodies as batteries, right? Because they can have a positive charge and a negative charge. Okay. So this is taking physics to a little bit of a different level, but it's still within the realm of quantum physics. So when we see like a AA battery, right? Like a AA battery, it goes dead. Well, what's changing is when we get the battery, it says this is a positive end and this is a negative end. When it loses all of its juice, the positive end actually flips and becomes negative, and the negative end becomes positive.
Okay.
This can happen to people when we experience chronic illness, when we experience things like chronic stress, when we experience autoimmune conditions, when we have poor health or a poor diet. All of those things can drain our batteries and cause that positive and negative to switch. Okay. So then what happens is what we're very fortunate in this design of human being bodies in that we have rechargeable batteries. So we can flip that switch back so that our muscle bodies are able to continue to take a charge. So the positive will be positive and the negative will be negative. Okay. In order to do that, we have to be in that parasympathetic state. That rest and digest, that relaxed state that changes our frequency so that we can then, our muscle bodies and our organ systems can then hold a charge, if you will. Okay. So the reason why I bring that up is because those charges, right? It's a frequency, but it's also, what's the word? A hertz. It's, we can measure that. We can measure that electrical activity in hertz, right? So that's where they've done the experiments. We can see that how much the organ systems, those meridians, are carrying a charge, what their vibration is at, if you will, but what that we can measure that frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when we're in good health or optimal health, our batteries are charged, right? So our positives are positives and our negatives are negatives. So that when we are exercising, when we're moving, we are increasing the charge in our batteries or our muscle bodies, which then are correlate with our organ systems. So then our organ systems will function properly.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So that is what I wanted to introduce today as far as the influence of physics and the influence of energetic medicine on our physical health, how we see it in homeopathy. And the same thing could go for other energetic medicines like flower essences, cell salts, undas, if you guys are familiar with those, and how we see sort of that basis of even acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. That just taps into specific points within a meridian that stimulate those battery packs, if you will, to take that charge. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, any questions about that? Yeah.
So I want to give them context, like why we're talking about this, because yesterday, Dr. Carmen and I were talking about, I was like, is this whole manifestation and quantum field thing real? Or did like some like random like hippie like just make this up and it became popular? Because my brain was not understanding how we as humans emit frequency.
Yes.
Right? Because in the whole quantum field, law of attraction manifestation field, it's that whatever vibration we're at is what we are attracting in the quantum field.
Yes.
So, and what I'm understanding based on today's episode is you kind of just laid the foundation as how, as humans, we are energy and energy and matter. And then as matter, we emit energy. So that's where these frequencies, these vibrations are coming out from us into the environment.
Exactly. So a good example of this, and I should have said this earlier, is that with what we can see this, say you're tuning into a radio station, right? And you're looking for a certain frequency, right? You tune into that radio station, you're getting, I don't know, 98.9, you know, and a song comes across the radio station, right? So you are tapping into that frequency that's being emitted by the radio station. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the same thing happens to us as energetic beings, is that when we are of a certain level of health, or if when our mind and our thoughts, we're emitting out those vibrational waves, right? Those frequencies. And that often will attract other frequencies that are of the same wavelength.
Okay, so back to your example of homeopathy, right? And that like we're at this, I introduce homeopathy that's like a little bit faster and mine matches. So take that same example, I'm emitting waves that are like this. The environment is going to be attracted at those same level waves that I'm currently at.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. What is the law, the similum, like cures like is the homeopathy means like things, right? And so that medicine is looking for like cures like. So they say that in relationship to characteristic symptoms, you're trying to heal characteristic symptoms with substances that create characteristic symptoms because they attract each other, if you will. Attract isn't the best word for that, but it works because we understand that. We understand, yeah.
And from like a biochemistry perspective, like dissolves like.
Similar, yes,
Right?
in biochemistry.
Like oil and water don't dissolve each other, but if you have an oily substance and you use an oil-based substance, it'll help cleaning and get rid of it.
Yes, it'll dissolve. Yes,
water, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So I want to, okay, I'm going to talk about this next time as well, but I want to introduce one more thing. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. Okay. So when we're talking about our thoughts and our feelings, right? So we've been able to measure these frequencies, okay? And these frequencies are associated with a certain level, a certain hertz or a certain vibration. Okay. I'm sorry that this might be a little bit fuzzy for you guys, but we can see those that are on the higher frequency, closer to 700 is what we consider positive thoughts or feelings, right? Neutral is, or neutrality is at 250, but even courage is just a little bit below that. And when we drop below 200 is what we consider those lower frequencies, right? This is where we see like our fear, depression, guilt, shame, sadness would be on the lower frequencies, right? So we can, I want to introduce this because we're going to talk about it a little bit more in the next episode, but that we can actually measure these, right? That this is part of this world of quantum mechanics, quantum physics, that we can see that if each one of these frequencies is associated with one of those waves, right? And what we put out is what will attract, if you will, back to us. So
yeah, because these, I'm pointing at him, I can see, as you can see, these emotions are chemical reactions. We've had a thought, we've had a chemical reaction that created that emotion that then became like, that chemical reaction became like a vibration or frequency that traveled through the body and outside of the body. So that makes sense. So when we see someone, even if they're turned sideways or we look in their eyes and they don't even say anything, we can feel kind of what kind of mood they're in. You can tell when someone's happy, right? Like, and they don't even have to smile at you. Like the energy feels lighter, but you walk in, the term we love is you could feel the tension in the room.
Yes. Yeah. That's because, yeah, you're exactly right. It's because you can feel that energy coming off of other people, right? Yeah. And so we've seen this, we've experienced this in a lot of different ways, but right today we're trying to explain it and give it words, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that it can, we can get a better understanding and we can kind of extrapolate this information and apply it and use it instead of it, noticing that it's happening to us. Let's use it to make, a change or a difference in our health and wellness. Yeah.
I totally make sense now that my brain is like, oh, E equals MC squared.
Yeah.
I have a thought creates an emotion. That emotion not only is internal, but it's like it starts from the inside and vibrates out, like through my body and out through my body.
Exactly. It's that neurochemical pathway. If you think of it a lot like that particle, right? It hits that pond or lake and it ripples out outside of this mass. It becomes an energetic wave that goes out, beyond us.
Yeah. Totally makes sense now.
Yeah. Okay. Good. It does. I mean, what is to me what is so neat about this is to be able to use these concepts to be able to address our health, right? Because it helps to kind of underline and maybe understand a little bit better our thoughts and our feelings in that process, and how it makes us feel, not just physically, right, but how it affects those around us. But hopefully it also helps us to understand, how we are influencing our physical body with those thoughts, whether they're positive or or negative within that spectrum or within those vibrations.
Yeah. And how we're influencing the world around us.
Exactly.
Like if we truly wanted peace, it has to start, like it used to say, it has to start from the inside out. And we thought that was like, I didn't understand it from a science and physics perspective, that it really truly is more than just a nice phrase, right? Like I become peaceful, I radiate peace out of my body into the environment.
Yeah. I think that some of the I don't know, maybe it's the not necessarily the lack of understanding, but the lack of exploration in this field of physics, because it's not the traditional Newtonian physics, right? It's another branch of physics. But a lot of folks will say that what's held or one of the theories that's kind of held back the exploration of quantum physics, especially within the US as far as our research goes. Other countries don't have as many setbacks as we do, is because the more that they explore quantum physics, is it sounds like what's rooted in the in other religions, if you will, right? And their idea of the universe, versus Americans, we don't always have that understanding of sort of what that universe outside of us, the influence that we have within that universe, versus other world religions or other cultures even have a better understanding, or maybe not an understanding, but like a framework as to how they influence the world and the universe at large around them. So
okay. Yeah, I get it. Like I love how like Carmen's always going to be the one that gets like all the like love mail and like so awesome. And then I'm always going to be the one that's going to get the hate mail that's like, you're so offensive. But it's like you're saying, like the other religions have a little bit more open mind in terms of like the universe.
yeah.
From my personal experience with Christianity, it tends to be a little bit more closed-minded and very black and white based on tradition and what has told us about the universe and stuff.
Yeah. So I think that's influenced, especially within the US, and research it within this field of physics. It's kind of, put us back compared to other countries. So a lot of the research in like the bioenergetics and the quantum mechanics, and how that influence in relationship with our physical health and with medicine, is usually done in other countries because of that.
Okay. So, we're getting there. We're getting there to where it's like, it's not either or, it's not creationism or evolution. We're getting to where it's like, it can be both.
It can be both. Yeah, exactly.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Aren't you glad we broke this up into two different ones?
Yeah, we'll go into a little bit more in depth. We had to lay the foundation today, hopefully.
All right, friends, talk to you later.